Some of history's most magnificent structures were built without any drawn blueprints. This video will reveal the hidden methods of the masters of unseen craft, the forgotten artisans who shaped wonders through pure skill and intuition. You will discover how human hands and minds achieved the impossible long before modern engineering existed. How did medieval builders erect soaring cathedrals using only mental templates and rules of thumb? What secret knowledge allowed ancient sculptors to cast breathtaking metal figures with nothing but fire and wax? By the end, you will see the world through the eyes of these creators, understanding a form of intelligence that blueprints can never capture. What does true mastery look like when there are no instructions to follow? The true master of unseen craft did not need a parchment plan to guide their hand. Their workshop was the mind itself, a living library of techniques, proportions, and solutions passed down through touch and careful observation. In a world where few could read or write, this embodied knowledge was the ultimate form of literacy. It was a silent conversation between the artisan and their material, a language spoken through the resistance of stone, the flow of molten metal, and the grain of wood. Experts call this a somatic intelligence, a deep understanding that lives in the muscles and the senses. This is what separates their world from our own modern design process, which relies so heavily on fixed, unchangeable drawings created long before the first brick is laid. For the ancient builder, the design was a living, breathing thing. They might arrive at a quarry and select stones not by a pre-written list, but by feeling their density, reading their seams, and intuitively knowing which piece would best fit a particular curve in an arch. A master stonemason could walk the rising walls of a cathedral and, with a single glance, sense a subtle imbalance. The solution was not found in a rolled-up blueprint but in a slight, on-the-spot adjustment, shaving a millimeter here, adding a touch more mortar there. This was not a mistake or a guess. It was a calculated act of improvisation, a response to the unique personality of the materials and the site itself. Their goal was not just structural integrity, but visual harmony, a feeling of rightness that could only be judged by the human eye in the moment. This reveals a creation system of immense sophistication, one that was fluid, adaptive, and deeply responsive. We are only now learning to listen to the whispers of this forgotten dialogue. This living knowledge did not travel on parchment, but on the breath of its keepers. In the absence of written manuals, the most complex architectural and artistic techniques were preserved through a powerful, yet fragile, chain of oral tradition and direct mentorship. A young apprentice would not be handed a book of instructions. Instead, they spent years at the master's side, their education unfolding through a silent language of watching, imitating, and being corrected. The master's hands became the only blueprint, their critical eye the only quality control. This was a system of learning built not on theory, but on relentless repetition. An apprentice might mix mortar for a year before being allowed to touch a stone, their muscles memorizing the perfect consistency long before their mind could name it. Anthropologists note that this method created an incredible resilience. Because knowledge was passed directly from person to person, it could be instantly adapted. A master builder arriving at a new quarry would adjust his techniques based on the local stone, his teachings flexible enough to accommodate the unique personality of the materials at hand. To encode vast amounts of technical information, masters employed ingenious mnemonic devices. Rhythmic chants helped remember the sequence for laying a complex vault. Symbolic stories, passed down through generations, secretly held the geometric principles for proportioning a facade or aligning a foundation. Stonemasons' guilds, for instance, were famous for their secret songs, melodic guides that detailed every step for carving and setting the stones of a perfect arch from the keystone down. This entire system functioned as a living, breathing library of human skill, but this great strength was also its greatest vulnerability. The library had no physical backup. If a single link in the chain of mentorship snapped, if a master died before passing on a crucial song, or if social upheaval scattered a guild, that priceless knowledge could evaporate into the air, leaving behind only the silent, majestic structures as a testament to what was lost. These soaring stone forests did not sprout from a single sheet of parchment. The great Gothic cathedrals of Europe, with their impossible height and walls of colored light, stand as the ultimate testament to the unseen craft. At places like Chartres and Notre Dame, the grand design was not a fixed blueprint locked in an office. It was a shared vision, a collective dream held in the minds of the many artisans who brought it to life. Masons, carpenters, and glassworkers all spoke a common visual language, one built on proportional systems and rules of thumb passed down through generations. The chief master mason held the overall symphony in his head, but each musician knew their part by heart. To coordinate this immense effort, they used ingenious physical tools. Inside the mason's lodge, you would find the tracing floor, a large flat surface of plaster or stone where full-scale drawings of complex window tracery and arch details were scratched directly into the floor. This was the shared map, the life-size guide from which wooden templates were cut. These templates then traveled to the stone yard, where they were laid upon rough blocks to guide the carver's chisels. Yet even with these guides, every stone was a unique puzzle. The builders were constantly adapting, feeling their way upward into the unknown. Consider the flying buttress, those graceful stone arms that leap from the walls to the ground. This was not a pre-calculated invention. It was a brilliant, on-the-fly solution born from necessity. As walls grew taller and windows larger, the structures began to groan and shift. The builders responded by adding external supports, then refining their shape and placement over decades through a process of trial and error. They were intuitively managing forces they could not see, calculating loads and stresses not with complex mathematics, but with a deep-seated, almost instinctual understanding of weight and balance. How could they possibly know that a wall needed just this much more support, that an arch required a slight change in its curve? They read the building itself as it rose, listening for cracks, watching for settlement, and responding in real time. This was engineering lived and breathed, not just drawn and filed away. The cathedral was not built, it was grown, stone by stone, through a conversation between human intention and physical law. What we see today as frozen perfection was, for them, a dynamic, ever-evolving creation. A blacksmith knew the iron was ready not from a numbered gauge, but from the specific shade of orange glowing in the forger's heart. This was intuition forged in fire, a deep empirical knowledge built from thousands of hours of watching, listening, and feeling. These masters did not have the theoretical physics to explain why a certain stone fractured along a hidden seam, but they knew the sound it made when struck correctly. They understood the personality of their materials through a lifetime of hands-on experimentation. A woodcarver learned how a piece of timber would season and warp by observing the patterns in its grain, choosing his shapes in harmony with the wood's own intentions. This was a science of patterns, a vast mental database of cause and effect compiled from nature and from countless past successes. Historical accounts are filled with such moments of profound sensory skill. Potters would determine the exact moisture content of clay simply by pressing it to their cheek, while glassblowers judged the viscosity of molten glass by the way it dripped from the rod. Their entire craft was a continuous conversation with the physical world, a dialogue where the material itself was an active participant. This relationship was often described in deeply metaphorical terms. A master sculptor did not force his will upon the marble. He was said to listen to the stone, to feel for the figure waiting within, and then simply remove what did not belong. This was not a poetic fantasy but a practical methodology. It meant observing the stone's natural fissures, its color variations, and its internal stresses, and then allowing those very characteristics to guide the chisel. A knot in the wood became the eagle's eye. A strange discoloration in the bronze was incorporated into the warrior's battle scar. Imperfections were not failures to be discarded. They were invitations to improvise, turning potential flaws into unique design features that gave each piece its soul. This flexible, deeply attentive approach stands in quiet contrast to our modern pursuit of perfect, standardized materials. It suggests a form of intelligence that is not about conquering nature, but about collaborating with it. What could we create today if we relearned the art of listening to our materials, hearing the stories they are waiting to tell? Geometry was the silent partner in every masterpiece. These artisans did not use complex equations, but they thought in lines, curves, and ratios that were woven into the very fabric of their culture. Their compass and rope were not just tools, they were extensions of their mind, capable of pulling perfect circles and right angles from the empty air. This was sacred geometry in its most practical form. A builder did not need to calculate the golden ratio as an abstract number. He knew it as a specific way of dividing a line, a pattern that felt inherently balanced and pleasing to the eye, a secret whispered by the spiral of a nautilus shell or the arrangement of petals on a flower. These patterns were so deeply encoded in tradition that they became a second nature. In ancient Egypt, the breathtaking slope of the pyramids was achieved through a simple, brilliant device called the Secrecy. This was a standardized slope ratio, a specific horizontal run for every vertical rise. To use it, workers would set up two pegs connected by a string. By measuring out precise units with knots or marks on that string, they could maintain the exact same angle on every single block, from the base to the apex, ensuring the pyramid's iconic form would rise true. This was mathematics made physical, a formula you could hold in your hands. Across the sea and centuries later, Renaissance sculptors sought a different kind of perfection, the harmony of the human body. They too relied on canons of proportion, mental maps that dictated the ideal relationships between the head, the torso, and the limbs. A sculptor would know that the body should be 8 heads tall, or that the navel naturally falls at a point that divides the body according to the golden section. This knowledge was not a rigid constraint, but a flexible framework. It allowed an artist to scale a small clay model up into a monumental marble statue with unwavering accuracy, all without a single measured drawing. How could such consistency be possible across generations? The rules were embedded in ritual and daily practice. A stonemason's guild might have a secret handshake that, in the positioning of the fingers, perfectly demonstrated the key angles of an arch. The rhythmic chant sung while laying bricks could encode the Fibonacci sequence in its syllables. These systems were the living blueprints, a shared mental framework that every initiated artisan carried within. They prove that true precision is not always born from a sheet of paper. It can be a kind of embodied mathematics, a knowledge that lives in the swing of a rope and the steady hand guiding a compass, creating wonders that still feel perfectly, mysteriously right. The master's relationship with wood or stone was not one of domination, but of collaboration. They saw the material itself as a co-creator, a living substance with its own will and wisdom. This profound partnership, a practice modern scholars call material intelligence, began with a deep reading of the material's unique language. A boat builder walking through a forest did not see just trees. He saw a naturally curved oak branch and recognized the perfect rib for a hull, its innate shape providing a strength no sawn timber could match. A carpenter examining a plank of walnut would study its grain not as a pattern, but as a map of the wood's future life, showing how it would expand with summer humidity and contract in winter's dry cold. This foresight was built into the very joints that held structures together. In the ancient tradition of Japanese joinery, complex wooden connections are carved to interlock without a single nail or glue. The master craftsman designs these joints with a precise amount of space, a deliberate looseness that allows the wood to breathe and shift over decades and centuries without splitting or failing. The building itself becomes a flexible, breathing entity. This respectful dialogue with the material had immense practical benefits. By listening to the wood, the artisan dramatically reduced waste, for every piece was used in a way that honored its inherent strength. The resulting artifacts were not merely assembled, they were nurtured into being. A clay pot coiled by hand from earth that the potter had dug herself carries the memory of that specific place in its color and texture. A sword forged from layered steel has a flowing grain pattern, a direct result of the smith working with the metal's impurities, folding them again and again to create a blade that is both resilient and deadly sharp. These objects do not feel imposed upon the world. They feel as if they grew from it, embodying a sustainability and resilience that our modern, standardized manufacturing often sacrifices for speed. The forgotten artisans did not see a block of marble and think, "What can I make from this?" Instead, they asked a more humble and powerful question: what is it that this stone wants to become? A sculptor carving in waxworks in a temporary medium, knowing their creation is destined to vanish in fire. This is the heart of the lost wax method, an alchemical process where disappearance is the key to permanence. For thousands of years, this technique allowed artisans to cast metal objects of stunning complexity, from the lifelike veins on a Greek god's hand to the intricate patterns on a Benin bronze plaque, all without a single technical drawing to guide them. The entire journey began with beeswax, a material both pliable and fragile. The artist would craft their prototype with meticulous care, building up forms and carving fine details directly into the soft wax. Every undercut, every subtle texture was shaped by hand in this initial model. This wax original was then the seed for its own destruction. It was carefully covered in a thick, heat-resistant clay, encased completely to form a mold. Small clay tubes were inserted, creating channels for the wax to escape and later for the metal to enter. The entire assembly was then baked in a kiln. As the temperature rose, the miracle of transformation began. The wax did not just soften, it melted completely, draining out through the channels and leaving behind a perfect, hollow negative space inside the hardened clay, a detailed cavity that was the ghost of the original sculpture. This was the moment of truth. The mold, still hot, was inverted, and molten bronze or gold was poured into the vacant space. The metal flowed, filling every microscopic crevice that the wax had once occupied. After it cooled, the craftsman would break the clay shell away, revealing the metal object within, a rebirth from the ashes of its former self. But the true mastery lay not in the steps themselves, but in the profound foresight required. The artisan had to mentally calculate how the wax model would translate into solid metal. They knew the metal would shrink slightly as it cooled, so the wax original had to be carved a tiny bit larger than the desired final piece. They had to anticipate how the molten river would flow through the mold, ensuring it would reach the most delicate, isolated parts without trapping air bubbles. This was a deep metallurgical intuition, a feel for the behavior of hot liquid metal that could only be learned through years of direct, hands-on experience and sometimes through costly failure. Every piece created this way was inherently unique. The original wax model was consumed in the process, making exact replication impossible. This was not a system for mass production, but for the creation of singular artifacts, each one a testament to a fleeting moment of artistic vision made eternal. It represents a perfect fusion of art and science, where the blueprint was not a drawing, but a living, breathing understanding of transformation itself. The lost wax method created singular treasures, but this same spirit of intuitive adaptation shaped the very homes of entire civilizations. A master builder in the American Southwest did not consult a universal construction manual. He knew that the local earth, mixed with straw and water, would bake in the sun into adobe bricks of perfect thermal mass, keeping interiors cool under the desert sun and warm during chilly nights. From the clustered pueblos of New Mexico to the ancient cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde, these structures rose from the ground itself. There forms a direct conversation with an arid landscape. This is the realm of vernacular architecture, a global tapestry of building wisdom woven not by named architects, but by generations of local hands. The design for a home was not a proprietary secret, but a communal inheritance, refined through centuries of trial and observation, and passed down through stories and demonstration. Each culture's solution was uniquely its own, yet they all shared a common goal: to create a shelter that was a seamless extension of its environment. In the humid tropics of Southeast Asia, builders read the monsoon rains and rising floodwaters, responding by raising entire villages on sturdy wooden stilts. This simple, brilliant elevation allowed water to flow freely below, protected homes from pests, and captured cooling breezes at a higher level. The design emerged from a deep, accumulated understanding of wind patterns and seasonal cycles. Anthropologists point to the incredible efficiency of this process. Builders used only what was readily available, indigenous materials that minimized transportation and embodied energy. A stone house in a rocky Greek hillside, a wooden longhouse in a Scandinavian pine forest, each was crafted from the immediate surroundings. They also possessed a sophisticated understanding of solar orientation. The famous tower houses of Yemen, some soaring over 10 stories high, are masterclasses in passive climate control. Their thick, mud brick walls act as natural insulators, while strategically placed small windows maximize ventilation and shade, creating a comfortable interior microclimate in the heart of the desert. This was not a one-time innovation, but a design refined over countless generations, each builder adding a small piece of knowledge to a growing collective intelligence. What modern engineer could possibly improve upon a system perfected over 1,000 years? This global heritage stands as a quiet rebuke to our era of standardized, one-size-fits-all construction. We ship identical materials across the world, then spend immense amounts of energy on heating and cooling to make our generic boxes livable. The vernacular builder achieved the same comfort with nothing but clever design and a profound respect for place. Their legacy urges us to look closer at the old ways, to value the localized knowledge that created not just shelters, but resilient, beautiful habitats that truly belonged to their land. The silence of these stones is deafening. At Stonehenge, multi-ton blocks were dragged for miles across the English countryside, then lifted into an impossible circle. On a remote Pacific island, the massive moai statues were somehow transported from the quarry to their coastal platforms, their blind eyes staring out to sea. These are the megalithic mysteries, colossal projects undertaken by cultures who left no written explanations, only the staggering evidence of their work. How do you move a mountain when you have no wheels, no pulleys, and no draft animals to help? The answer lies not in magic, but in a form of social engineering as sophisticated as the structures themselves. Moving a single great stone required the coordinated effort of an entire community, a shared purpose that turned human muscle into a single, powerful machine. Researchers imagined teams using log rollers and wooden sledges, lubricating the path with water or mud to reduce friction. They speculate about levers and frames, using simple physics to nudge impossible weights inch by agonizing inch. Yet these theories remain educated guesses, for the true methods were likely a fluid combination of techniques, a deep practical knowledge of physics passed down through generations of lived experience. Perhaps the most baffling precision is found not in the moving but in the fitting. High in the Andes, the Inca built walls of such intricate stonework that a razor blade cannot slip between the blocks. These polygonal stones, each one a unique, irregular shape, interlock in a giant three-dimensional puzzle, holding firm for centuries without a drop of mortar. This was not the result of a detailed architectural plan. It was a system of trial and error, of direct demonstration. A master would work on one stone, then have an apprentice bring over the next block. The master would trace the contours of the first stone onto the second with a colored dust, and the apprentice would painstakingly peck away at the granite until the two faces matched perfectly. This knowledge was transferred through touch and sight, a slow, meticulous dance between teacher, student, and stone. The legacy of these megalithic builders forces us to abandon our modern arrogance. They achieved feats that we would struggle to replicate even with our advanced technology, and they did it through collective memory, honed instinct, and a profound understanding of their material world. Their monuments are a permanent question etched into the landscape. What other forms of genius have we forgotten, simply because they were never written down? A master weaver's hands knew the pattern long before the first thread was strung. Within the quiet rhythm of the loom, complex geometric stories and symbolic maps of the cosmos were held entirely in memory, passed from one generation to the next without a single sketch or written instruction. This was the unseen craft of the textile artisan, a discipline where knowledge was woven directly into the fabric of daily life. In the high Andes, weavers created vibrant textiles bursting with intricate motifs, each one a repository of community history and spiritual belief. A diamond shape might represent a mountain spirit, while a zigzag line charted the path of a river. The weaver did not follow a pattern book. Her guide was a mental template, a precise sequence held in her mind and expressed through the rhythmic counting of threads and the unerring feel of the shuttle passing through the warp. Her body remembered the pattern as much as her mind did, her fingers moving in a practiced dance that translated abstract thought into tangible beauty. This deep, embodied knowledge was often the guarded domain of women, who sustained these artistic traditions within their communities, ensuring that cultural identity remained alive and vibrant in every thread. The tools themselves were memory aids, the arrangement of the loom, the specific tension of the threads, and the sequence of countless tiny knots all encoded the design. In Persia, carpet weavers followed a mental map of colors and symbols so precise that they could reproduce a room-sized masterpiece with breathtaking consistency. Their dye recipes were another form of oral knowledge, secrets pulled from the local earth, using roots, berries, and insects to create a lasting palette that told a story of place. Consider the iconic Navajo rug. While certain design themes like the storm pattern or the Ye figures are recognizable, no two rugs are ever identical. Each is a variation, a unique interpretation guided by the weaver's inner template and immediate inspiration. This was not a flaw, but a feature of the living tradition. The weaver possessed the core principles, the cultural grammar of the design, and within that framework, she had the freedom to improvise, to let the wool and the moment guide her hands. This process demonstrates a profound fusion of visual and motor memory, where the hands learn to think and the eyes learn to feel. The resulting textile was far more than a functional blanket or a floor covering. It was a narrative, a spiritual diagram, and a birthright, all encoded in a language of color and form that could be read by those who knew how to look. What stories are we losing in our own world, where patterns are downloaded in an instant and the slow, sure wisdom of the hand is fading from memory? The soul of a Stradivarius violin does not live in its shape alone, but in the silent song of its wood. For generations, master luthiers like Antonio Stradivari created instruments with a voice so pure and powerful that it has never been perfectly duplicated. These artisans worked within a world of unwritten secrets, a deep sensory knowledge of how spruce and maple could be transformed into a vessel for sound. Their craft was a triad of mysteries, an intimate understanding of wood acoustics, varnish chemistry, and structural harmonics, all guarded within family workshops and guilds. A luthier began not with a blueprint but by listening. He would tap a thin plate of spruce and listen intently to its resonant frequency, the specific pitch it produced when struck. Through years of experience, his ear learned to identify the perfect ring that promised a brilliant tone, a skill that could only be passed down through direct mentorship, not a textbook. The final arching of the violin's belly, the precise thicknesses to which the wood was painstakingly carved, were all guided by this tactile and auditory feedback. This was a form of tuning the wood itself, long before the strings were ever attached. Then came the varnish, a concoction whose exact recipe has been lost to time. Music historians suggest it was more than just a protective coating. It was a crucial ingredient in the instrument's voice. The secret likely lay in the chemical interaction between the hand-applied varnish and the wood, a process that took years to mature and unlock the full depth of the sound. The goal was not to build a rigid object but to create a responsive, living system. The great pianos of the 19th century were born from a similar philosophy. The frame, the soundboard, the hammers, each element was shaped by hand with an intuitive feel for how vibrations would travel and blend. The final voicing of a piano, the delicate needling of the hammer felt to perfect its tone, was an art of subtle, unrecorded adjustments. A master could listen to a single note and, with a few precise pricks of a tool, soften a harsh overtone or bring out a hidden warmth. This is why modern science, with all its spectral analysis and imaging, cannot simply reverse engineer a Stradivarius. The magic was not in a fixed set of dimensions, but in the cumulative effect of thousands of tiny, intuitive decisions made by a human hand in dialogue with a unique piece of wood. The resulting instruments feel alive under a musician's touch, producing tones that seem to breathe and weep and sing with a complexity that feels almost human. They stand as permanent proof that the highest form of art often resides in the whispers of a process that no blueprint could ever hope to capture. A hero's journey might secretly chart the safest path through a treacherous mountain pass. The story of a great flood could hold the precise geometry for building a resilient terrace wall. In cultures around the world, the art of storytelling was never just for entertainment. It was a sophisticated data storage system for the master artisan's most vital knowledge. Complex technical instructions for tasks like mixing a durable mortar or firing a clay pot at the perfect temperature were often embedded within the adventures of gods, heroes, and ancestral spirits. Folklorists have found that wrapping a practical lesson in a compelling narrative made the information far more memorable and easier to pass down through countless generations. A dry list of steps for building a fish weir is easily forgotten, but a thrilling tale about the clever river god who taught the people to build a trap from willow and stone. Now that story lives in the heart and mind. This was a brilliant fusion of education and cultural identity, where learning a craft meant inheriting a piece of your people's soul. Consider the Polynesian navigators, master sailors who crossed vast stretches of open ocean without compasses or charts. Their most important tool was not a physical object, but a mental map reinforced by epic songs and chants. These stories did not just describe the stars, they wove them into a celestial narrative. A specific sequence in a chant might correspond to the rising of key constellations, while a verse about a mythical sea turtle could encode the direction of a prevailing current. By singing the stories, the navigator was simultaneously rehearsing his route, the rhythm of the words locking the vital sailing directions into his muscle memory. This narrative method ensured that the community's most sophisticated practices never relied on a fragile parchment that could be lost or burned. The knowledge lived in the breath of its people, constantly renewed with each telling. In this light, the village elder recounting an ancient legend was not merely a keeper of tales, but a librarian of engineering principles. The artisan and the storyteller were one and the same, their crafts intertwined in the essential work of preserving a way of life. What profound understandings have we misplaced simply because we stopped telling the right stories? The rise of the blueprint marked the quiet end of an era. For centuries, creation was a conversation between the maker and the material, but the 18th and 19th centuries introduced a new language, one of fixed lines and unchangeable specifications. Industrialization demanded not just products but identical products, and this new efficiency came at a cost. The living knowledge of the artisan was systematically transferred onto technical drawings, flat representations that could be sent to any factory floor. This was the great shift from personalized artistry to mass production, a transition that prioritized uniformity above all else. Suddenly, a chair was no longer shaped by a carpenter who felt the personality of the wood. It was built by separate workers, each repeating one small, isolated task, following a diagram that allowed for no deviation. The result was incredible accessibility, bringing goods to the masses at an unprecedented scale, but it sacrificed the adaptive nuances, the subtle adjustments that once made each piece a perfect response to its environment. Historians point to the rapid erosion of the mentor-apprentice model as a primary casualty. The intimate chain of knowledge, where a master's touch corrected an apprentice's hand, was broken and replaced by the impersonal authority of the drawing. Artisan guilds, the centuries-old keepers of specialized skills, were marginalized, their secret songs and mnemonic chants rendered obsolete by printed manuals. Consider the journey of a simple piece of furniture. In a traditional workshop, a joiner would measure a specific alcove and craft a bookshelf that fit its unique contours, perhaps allowing for a slight slope in the floor or an irregularity in the wall. The joints were cut with a deliberate understanding of how that particular oak plank would expand and contract with the seasons. In the new factory system, that same bookshelf was designed in a distant office for a theoretical, perfectly square room. It was assembled from interchangeable parts with no capacity to accommodate the charming imperfections of a real home. The soul of the object, the unique fingerprint of the maker's intuition, was sanded away. This created a profound disconnect, not just between the maker and the product, but between the product and the world it inhabited. We gained scalability and consistency, but we lost the resilient, responsive intelligence that built cathedrals and carved statues from wax. Our modern world is built on this foundation of glorious, efficient uniformity, a world of wondrous plenty, yet it forces us to ask a difficult question. In our pursuit of perfect replication, what essential dialogue with our world have we forgotten? the silent artifacts are finally beginning to speak. Modern archaeology has become a form of high-tech detective work, using advanced tools to listen to the faint whispers left by the masters of unseen craft. Researchers no longer just admire the finished object, they interrogate it. They run their fingers over the microscopic striations left by a bronze chisel, analyzing the angle and depth to understand the carver's specific grip and motion. They examine the chemical residue inside a cracked clay pot, identifying the precise mixture of grains and herbs that was once cooked within it. Each tiny scratch and mineral deposit is a clue in a grand historical mystery, a puzzle aimed at reverse engineering the very thought processes of ancient artisans. This is not mere speculation, it is a rigorous, hands-on science of reconstruction. Take the legendary Roman concrete, a material that has endured for 2,000 years in harbors, constantly battered by salt water, while our modern versions crumble in decades. For centuries, its recipe was a complete enigma, a secret lost with the fall of the empire. But by drilling tiny cores from ancient Roman piers and subjecting them to spectroscopic analysis, chemists discovered the magical ingredient, a specific blend of volcanic ash and lime that creates a remarkably resilient crystalline structure. The Romans did not understand the chemistry of pozzolanic reactions in the way we do now, but their empirical, hands-on experimentation led them to a perfect, sustainable formula. The real breakthrough comes when researchers move from the lab to the workshop. Experimental archaeologists dedicate years to physically recreating these lost processes. They will spend months smelting iron in a clay furnace built to exact historical specifications, failing again and again, until the day they finally produce a usable bloom of metal. In that moment of success, they gain something a textbook can never provide, an intimate understanding of the countless tiny decisions the original smith had to make. They feel the critical importance of the bellows rhythm. They learn to recognize the exact color of the embers that signals the right temperature, and they understand why the master might have added a particular type of seashell to the fire. This is how we bridge the gap between a heap of artifacts and a living, breathing craft. By getting our hands dirty, we start to think like the artisans. We comprehend that a certain pattern of hammer marks was not a mistake, but the most efficient way to draw out the metal. We see that a seemingly decorative chip in a stone block was actually a strategic weakening point to split it cleanly from the bedrock. Each successful reconstruction is a conversation across time, a testament to the incredible ingenuity of the human mind. This detective work does more than solve historical puzzles. It actively mines the past for solutions to our modern problems. The rediscovery of Roman concrete offers a blueprint for creating more durable and environmentally friendly infrastructure today. Studying ancient Persian wind towers could revolutionize passive cooling in our energy-hungry cities. The old ways are not just curiosities, they are a deep well of sustainable innovation, a reminder that the most advanced technology is sometimes that which has already been perfected by time and human hands. The master's mind was a sanctuary of profound patience. This was not a hurried patience, but a deep, abiding stillness that allowed them to perceive the slow truth of their materials. Their work demanded a focus so complete that the outside world simply fell away. Think of a calligrapher seated before a vast scroll of rice paper. Her entire universe has narrowed to the point of her brush, the consistency of the ink, and the breath she holds for a single, fluid stroke. There is no room for distraction, for a wandering thought would manifest as a clumsy line, ruining hours of meticulous preparation. This intense absorption is what modern psychologists call a flow state, a zone of optimal performance where self-consciousness vanishes and action and awareness merge into one. In this state, time itself seems to warp, with hours feeling like minutes, and the artisan's movements become effortless, almost automatic. This is not mindless repetition, but a heightened form of presence where intuition takes the lead. A woodcarver in this state does not consciously decide how to navigate a tricky knot in the grain. His hands simply know, guided by a lifetime of sensory memory, making micro-adjustments his conscious mind could never calculate in time. This phenomenon points to a powerful concept known as embodied cognition, the idea that our thinking is not confined to our brains but is distributed throughout our entire body. The master's knowledge lived in the flex of their wrist, the pressure of their fingers, the very posture of their spine as they worked. A potter centering clay on the wheel is not just using her hands, she is listening with her whole being to the subtle vibrations traveling up her arms, feeling for the perfect, humming balance between centrifugal force and her own guiding pressure. This is why these skills could not be learned from a book. They required years, often decades, of disciplined practice to forge that seamless connection between intention and action, to allow the hands to truly learn how to think. This inner development was the bedrock of their resilience. When a complex casting failed or a nearly finished sculpture cracked, it was this cultivated mindset, this deep sense of purpose that transcended any single object, that allowed them to begin again without despair. Their craft was not merely a profession, it was a form of meditation, a lifelong practice in mindfulness that shaped the maker as much as the thing being made. The chisel was not merely a tool, it was a sacred instrument. In countless traditions, the unseen craft was a spiritual act, a physical prayer where the artisan served as a bridge between the earthly and the divine. Before a single stone was laid for a temple or a tree was felled for a sacred pole, the community and the builders would perform intricate rituals. These ceremonies asked for blessings upon the materials and the tools, transforming ordinary wood and stone into vessels ready to receive a higher purpose. This spiritual framework was not a separate practice from the work. It was the very heart of it, ensuring that every action was performed with mindfulness and deep respect. Consider the creation of a Buddhist statue. The sculptor would often enter a period of meditation before beginning, seeking to empty his own ego and become a clear channel for the divine form he was about to reveal. The act of carving was a slow, deliberate unveiling, a collaborative process with the sacred. The final statue was not considered a simple representation. It was believed to be a living residence for the deity, its eyes often ceremonially painted in last to awaken its spirit. This same principle animated the weaving of liturgical vestments in medieval Europe, where every stitch and symbolic color was chosen with prayer, transforming cloth into a holy text. The object itself became a mediator, a tangible point of contact between the human community and the spiritual world. We see this holistic integration in the practices of Native American potters, who would sing specific songs while coiling the clay. These songs were not for entertainment, they were a way to instill the vessel with harmony, to weave the rhythms of the natural world and ancestral blessings directly into its form. A pot made this way was not just for holding water, it was a living entity, a participant in ceremony and daily life. This world-view stands in quiet contrast to our modern, secular production, where the goal is often efficiency and profit. The ancient artisans' work was a complete integration of the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. The quality of their attention was itself a form of devotion, and the objects they created carried that sacred charge for generations. What does it mean to make something when you believe your own spirit is being woven into the work? A master's signature was often woven into the cloth, not written on a page. For centuries, the profound contributions of women artisans have been the quiet undercurrent of unseen craft, their mastery flourishing in domains like textiles, pottery, and herbal medicine. While history books celebrated the cathedrals built by men, It was frequently women who preserved the techniques essential to daily life and cultural survival, operating within the intimate, often unrecorded domestic sphere. Their workshops were the hearth, the garden, and the communal courtyard. Experts point to gatherings like quilting bees in early America or weaving circles across Europe and Asia as vital sites of innovation. These were not just social events, they were living libraries of skill transmission. Around a frame stretched with cloth, women would share and refine patterns, their needles stitching complex geometric stories while their conversations passed down the secrets of dye recipes, the perfect tension for a loom, and the mending of fragile fabrics. This collective intelligence ensured that crucial knowledge flowed from one generation to the next, all without a single written manual. In pre-colonial Africa, for instance, women potters developed distinctive styles and firing techniques that served as a visual language, instantly identifying their specific community. Their work was a perfect fusion of aesthetic beauty and profound utility. A water pot was not merely a container. Its elegant form and porous clay were engineered to cool the water inside through evaporation, a simple yet brilliant form of ancient refrigeration. These artisans understood the properties of their local clay, the best fuels for their open-pit kilns, and the symbolic motifs that held spiritual significance, all knowledge held in their hands and shared through demonstration. Recognizing these overlooked masters fundamentally expands our understanding of unseen craft. It reveals a legacy of creativity and resilience that was deeply collaborative, inherently sustainable, and absolutely foundational. These women were not just making things, they were weaving the very fabric of society, shaping its daily rhythms and cultural identity from the ground up, their hands quietly building the world one thread, one part, one healed patient at a time. Scarcity has always been the unexpected forge of genius. When war or disaster stripped away all luxury, the master of unseen craft did not simply survive, they reinvented. Their greatest innovations often bloomed not in times of plenty, but under the harsh constraints of crisis, where the rigid blueprint was a useless fantasy. Imagine a village after an earthquake, its homes reduced to rubble. The rebuilding did not wait for an architect's plan. Instead, the community's collective memory took over, guided by elders who remembered which traditional building methods had withstood the tremors for generations. They did not clear the broken stones, they sorted them, turning the debris itself into the foundation for new walls, adapting the old layouts to suit the newly scarred landscape. This was not a surrender to chaos, it was a profound act of resilience, a living dialogue with ruin. Historians note that these moments of extreme duress frequently sparked bursts of creativity that would shape entire eras. In the crucible of conflict, a blacksmith, cut off from his usual supply of iron, would not stop working. He would gather shattered swords, broken wagon wheels, and discarded farm tools, learning to forge them all into a single, serviceable plowshare. His skill was no longer just about shaping metal, but about reading its history and potential in every scar and curve. Similarly, tailors with no access to new cloth would become masters of piecing, creating elaborate patchwork garments where every scrap told a story of loss and renewal. This resourcefulness reveals the deepest truth of their craft. It was a dynamic, fluid intelligence. The constraint of limited materials forced a deeper listening, a more intimate conversation with the physical world. A woodcarver with only small, scavenged pieces of timber would innovate new joinery techniques to create larger objects, his designs becoming more elegant and efficient out of sheer necessity. These artisans demonstrate that the most sustainable solutions are often born from limitation. Their ability to improvise, to see a tool in a piece of scrap or a home in a pile of stones, offers a powerful lesson for our own time. In an era of abundance, we are often paralyzed when resources run thin. But the forgotten masters remind us that true problem-solving flourishes when we are forced to look closer, to think with our hands, and to find the possibility hidden within the constraint itself. The echoes of those ancient workshops are not silent, they are simply finding new voices. A quiet revolution is underway in studios and garages around the world. A modern handcraft movement consciously reaching back to reclaim the values of the unseen masters. Today's artisans, from blacksmiths to weavers, are not rejecting technology outright, but are weaving it into a new kind of practice, one that prioritizes the personalized and the sustainable over the disposable products of mass production. They are the new keepers of an old flame, often drawing direct inspiration from historical techniques while adapting them with contemporary tools. A furniture maker might use a digital router to create a complex joint, but the design itself is based on a centuries-old principle of wood movement learned from studying Japanese joinery. This revival is driven by a profound hunger, a desire for authenticity in a world of sameness, for the tangible quality that comes from a maker's direct touch, and for a meaningful connection to the very process of creation. You can see this same spirit animating the slow food movement, where the focus is on traditional cooking methods, locally sourced ingredients, and the patient, hands-on work that transforms a meal into an experience. The parallels are striking. Both are a conscious pushback against a culture of speed and homogenization. The old model of mentorship is also being reborn in fascinating new forms. While a master potter might still take on a live-in apprentice, that same knowledge now flows through online platforms, with skilled makers sharing their processes in detailed videos, creating a global guild where questions are answered and techniques are demonstrated across continents. This digital village square is facilitating the transfer of embodied knowledge in a way that would have been unimaginable just a generation ago. This trend does more than just preserve endangered skills like hand forging or natural dyeing. It actively fosters vibrant communities centered on shared values of mindfulness and sustainability. It suggests that the essential core of unseen craft, that deep, intuitive knowledge, the meditative focus, and the ability to adapt to the material at hand, is not a relic. It is a deeply relevant human wisdom, a necessary counterbalance to the frantic pace of our modern world, reminding us that some of the best solutions are not found in a new algorithm, but in the timeless conversation between a thoughtful hand and a willing material. A master's most valuable possession was often a secret they never spoke aloud. This created a deep ethical conflict that shaped the course of history itself, the ancient tension between guarding knowledge and giving it away. On one hand, an artisan's unique skill was their livelihood, a hard-won advantage that fed their family. Guilds across medieval Europe protected this advantage with ferocious loyalty, binding members with solemn oaths of secrecy. To reveal the formula for a vibrant crimson dye or the exact tempering process for a sword blade was considered an act of treason against the entire craft, punishable by fines or expulsion. This secrecy was a form of self-preservation, a fortress wall built to protect a fragile economy of skill. Yet, on the other hand, many cultures operated on a completely different principle, viewing specialized knowledge not as private property but as a shared inheritance for the entire community. In these societies, a master potter or healer was expected to pass their skills to all who showed interest, strengthening the collective resilience and ensuring the group's survival. The flow of innovation was directly shaped by which path a culture chose. Consider the centuries-long mystery of Chinese porcelain, that luminous, translucent ceramic prized across the globe. China guarded its production secrets for nearly 1,000 years, creating a priceless monopoly. It was only through a combination of determined espionage and the eventual, willing collaboration of a Jesuit missionary who shared the secrets of Chinese kilns with Europe that the knowledge finally spread, revolutionizing pottery on a new continent. This historical dilemma is not a relic. It echoes powerfully in our modern debates over intellectual property, patents, and open-source technology. When does protecting an idea encourage further invention, and when does it simply stifle the collective progress of humanity? How do we honor and protect the cultural heritage embedded in traditional crafts without locking them away in a vault where they risk being forgotten? The old masters leave us with no easy answers, only the clear evidence that every choice to hide or share a piece of knowledge sends a ripple through the future. Their legacy challenges us to find a balance, to build a world where innovation can flourish without sacrificing the rich, diverse tapestry of human creativity that belongs to us all. A perfectly smooth, symmetrical pot can feel cold and distant, while one with a subtle warp and the potter's thumbprint still visible in the clay seems to hold a whisper of its own creation. This is the heart of Wabi-Sabi, a Japanese philosophy that finds profound beauty in impermanence, imperfection, and the honest evidence of the human hand. For the masters of unseen craft, this was not a conscious artistic choice, but the natural outcome of their process. Their goal was not a sterile, flawless object, but one that carried the warmth of its making, where the slight asymmetry in a hand-forged iron hinge or the unpredictable flow of a wood grain became the very source of its character. Aesthetic philosophers point out that these so-called flaws are not mistakes to be hidden. They are records of a unique moment in time, a collaboration between the artisan's intention and the material's own will. Look at a piece of raku pottery pulled glowing from the fire and cooled in a bed of leaves. The crackled glaze and smoky patterns are not defects, they are the signature of the flame itself, an unrepeatable event captured in clay. In the same way, the varied impressions on a hand-bound book's leather cover tell you it was shaped by human tools, not a hydraulic press. This world, represents a fundamental shift in perspective, one that values the journey of creation over the final product. It accepts that nature is never perfectly symmetrical and that human effort is inherently variable. This embrace of the imperfect creates objects with a deep emotional resonance. We are drawn to them because they feel authentic and alive, their irregularities echoing our own human complexities. In a world saturated with identical, mass-produced goods, this aesthetic offers a powerful antidote to our obsession with uniformity. It teaches us to see the artistry in the unique, the transient, and the slightly flawed, inviting a more mindful and deeply personal connection to the things we choose to live with. The human hand can solve equations that the conscious mind has not yet learned to write. This is the quiet miracle of intuitive engineering, where the artisan's touch unconsciously obeyed the fundamental laws of physics and mathematics. For generations, these masters developed powerful rules of thumb or heuristics that were shortcuts to profound physical truths. A stonemason knew the precise angle for dressing a block not from a trigonometry table, but from the way the hammer felt in his hand and the clean ring of a perfect strike. This knowledge was not theoretical, it was embodied, learned through thousands of hours of repetition until the body itself internalized the algorithm for success. Modern research into embodied cognition confirms this phenomenon, showing that our physical interactions with the world train our nervous system to perform complex calculations in the background. A potter throwing a vessel on a wheel is not consciously solving differential equations for centrifugal force. Her hands, back, and shoulders have learned to feel the perfect balance, applying just enough pressure to coax the spinning clay upward without collapse, her entire body acting as a living computer tuned to the physics of the moment. This deep physical learning allowed for astonishing precision. Engineers who analyze ancient Roman aqueducts or Gothic cathedrals are often stunned to find that the empirical rules used by the builders produce stress distributions and load paths that align almost perfectly with modern finite element analysis. The master masons who designed the arch, for instance, discovered through trial and error the precise proportions and keystone angle that would channel immense weight down into the supporting columns, creating a structure of perfect equilibrium. They did this without a formal understanding of compressive forces, yet their intuition led them to the same mathematical truths. Consider the graceful hull of a traditional Polynesian voyaging canoe, a shape honed over centuries to slice through ocean swells with minimal resistance. The builders who carved these forms from single logs had no concept of the Reynolds number or fluid dynamics. Their knowledge came from watching waves, feeling the pull of the water, and refining their designs over generations based on what worked. Their hulls are masterpieces of hydrodynamics, engineered for efficiency and stability through pure observation and embodied practice. This remarkable convergence between ancient intuition and modern science suggests that our ancestors possessed a sophisticated, deeply internalized understanding of natural laws. Their knowledge was not less than our own. It was simply encoded in a different language, one spoken by the hands, the senses, and a lifetime of careful attention to the world. It challenges our modern reverence for the purely analytical and asks us to once again value the wisdom that lives in our very bones. A digital sculptor can now design a complex form on a screen, but the computer cannot feel the subtle resistance of the wood grain under the chisel. This is the new frontier for unseen craft, a landscape where artificial intelligence and three-dimensional printing offer both a powerful new toolkit and a profound philosophical challenge. Visionaries suggest that these technologies can act as a kind of digital ark, preserving endangered skills for the future. Imagine a system that records the precise pressure, angle, and rhythm of a master blacksmith's hammer stroke, then translates that data into a simulation that an apprentice can feel through a haptic glove. This is not science fiction, it is an emerging reality, one that could theoretically save techniques on the brink of extinction. Yet, critics pose a difficult question. Does learning a craft through a perfect digital simulation truly build the same resilient, tactile wisdom as years of hands-on failure and success? When every variable is controlled, does the maker ever learn the essential art of adaptation, of responding to the material's own unexpected personality? This is the core of the risk, a potential further detachment from the manual soul of creation. Consider the power of parametric design, where an artist sets a few key rules and the software generates thousands of intricate, organic variations. The results can be breathtakingly complex, forms that would be nearly impossible to calculate by hand. But these forms can also feel cold and sterile, lacking the subtle imperfections, the slight asymmetries, and the intuitive adjustments that a human hand introduces. A digital blueprint is rigid, while a master's intuition is fluid, constantly tweaking a design in response to the unique piece of stone or wood in front of them. The most promising path forward is not a choice between old and new, but a thoughtful fusion. We are already seeing the rise of the hybrid artisan, a maker who might use three-dimensional printing to create a precise wax model for lost wax casting, then finish the final bronze piece with traditional hand tools and patinas. Another might use AI to analyze the structural integrity of a chair design, then rely on their own embodied knowledge of wood joinery to assemble it. This hybrid approach uses digital tools as enhancements, not replacements, leveraging their power for precision and exploration while keeping the maker's tactile intelligence firmly in the loop. The goal is not to replicate the past, but to build a bridge to a future where technology amplifies our human capacities instead of replacing them. The evolving conversation between the hand and the algorithm invites us to be intentional. How can we use these powerful new tools not to bypass the slow, deep work of mastery, but to deepen our own connection to the physical world? The legacy of the unseen craftsperson does not demand we abandon progress, but rather that we carry their most vital lesson forward, ensuring that the soul of the making process, the dialogue between intention and material, remains at the heart of creation, no matter what tools we use. Their legacy is a quiet challenge to our modern world of instant blueprints and digital perfection. We have surrounded ourselves with wonders of flawless uniformity, yet we often feel a strange emptiness, a disconnect from the very things we own and the spaces we inhabit. The masters of unseen craft did not just build objects, they built relationships with their materials, their communities, and the slow, patient passage of time. They understood that true creation is a conversation, not a command. This is the profound lesson they leave for us, a reminder that the most resilient and beautiful things are often born from a deep, embodied knowledge that no single drawing can ever contain. In our own lives, we can honor this legacy by seeking out the human touch, by choosing the unique pottery mug over the mass-produced one, by learning to mend a piece of clothing instead of discarding it, or by simply taking a moment to appreciate the worn handrail on an old staircase, smoothed by generations of use. Every time we engage with our world in a hands-on way, we are participating in that same ancient dialogue. We are reclaiming a piece of that intuitive intelligence, finding satisfaction not just in the final product, but in the mindful process of making itself. Their stories are not locked in the past, they are an invitation to look closer, to move slower, and to listen for the whispers of craft in the world around you. If these journeys into forgotten wisdom have sparked your curiosity, we would love to hear what resonated with you most. Share your own experiences with craftsmanship in the comments, and subscribe to continue exploring the hidden histories that shape our lives. For in the end, the greatest masterpiece any of us can create is a life lived with the same passion, perseverance, and profound attention that built the cathedral.